Hello, hello everyone. Hello everyone. Welcome to the stream. We will wait for a few more moments before we begin. I hope you all are enjoying this Global Hack Week API season and I hope you are learning a lot. In the meantime, I would love to know where you all are joining from. Before we get started, let's wait for a few more folks to join in. Please post wherever you are joining from in the comment and I would love to know you all. Let's get started in a bit. Awesome. So Daniel is joining from Texas. We have people from New York, Oklahoma. Great to see so many NA folks joining on. Like that is cool. We have one from Nepal, Rasmi as well. Great to see you here, Rasmi. Awesome. Cool. We have from Germany as well. Wow, that is cool. So seeing a lot of diversity over here. We have from India as well. Okay, cool. Sananda is joining from India. Awesome. How has been this global hacking for you? Like, is this your first stream, or have you joined other streams as well? And what is like? Like, are you enjoying the sessions? I hope you all are because I am. I'm catching up with a lot of streams, and yeah, they really seem to be fun one for me. Awesome. Let me pull off my screen. Give me a moment before we get started. Uh, cool. I hope you all can see my screen now. So today we will be talking about APIs, what are they, and what you can do with APIs, and we will be using API tool or a platform called Postman. So it makes working with APIs very easy and it provides a wonderful GUI interface where you can interact with different sort of APIs, even build your own API. So we'll be using that tool. We will be taking everything from the beginner level. So I'll be explaining everything from what an API is, what are the use cases, what are different types of APIs, all those things, right? And we'll be doing this in a three-part series. So this is the first part. We have the another part which will be later today. It's around 4:30 p.m. Indian Standard Time, and I will have to check about the Eastern Time. So I'll post that in the comments later on. But yeah, this is the first part of the series, and the last one we will be building a Spotify song recommender using the Spotify web app. So that is some cool stuff. So before getting started, let me introduce myself. Hello, everyone. I am Sagar. I am an MLS coach from Nepal. I am also the founder of KU Hackfest, which is like a national hackathon here in Nepal. I'm also a campus expert. I do love pizza. I don't like, I can't cook great pizza, but yeah, I love finding good pizza stops and, hanging out with friends over the weekends with some good pizzas. And I do love travel and nature, and I am a big fan of cloud and DevOps. So I'm practicing DevOps and building projects around it. So if you want to connect with me, have a chat, or anything, then these are my social handles. I'm active on both Twitter and LinkedIn. Cool. So let's dive a bit into what we will be doing today. Hey, Susmita. Yeah, I can see them in the chat. Cool. Uh, so we will be talking about four different things today. So we will be talking about what API is, what is Postman, and how to use it. We'll be also talking about bit into what are the API requests and response, and doing a bit of deep dive into those things. And we will also be talking about the HTTP methods. I will talk about them in a bit later, and we will be learning all of this in a real world example, right? So we'll be taking a case of a librarian who will, help uh, students get books, borrow books, and all those things like a day in a work of a librarian. And we'll be doing that with the help of the API. Cool. Awesome. So, surprise, surprise, folks. We have an exclusive swag pack giveaway. So, this is an exclusive MLS swag bundle that you all can win. But to be eligible for this, you will need to complete all the part of this track. So, that will be today. There will be two parts, and the last part, the third part, and the last one will be tomorrow. I will be posting all the timings and checking links in the Discord as well as here in the commenting later on. So if you complete all of this track, you might be eligible to win a swag pack. And more details on this in a bit. Cool. So surprise. Cool. That was the surprise and prerequisites. So we are pretty much set with minimal stuff. So we'll just need a Postman account. You can also use Postman desktop app, which is optional, of course, because we will be doing all the things in the browser itself. So if you are comfortable, uh, doing all the things in your browser, so you are good to go. You just need a Postman account. That's it. Cool. And this is by far the most important link that you all need to know, because I have created a resources docs where you have all the links and all the resources. So this is one link that you need to remember. I will just post this in the comment itself, so all of you can get this. Cool. So just a second. I'll paste this in the comment. Awesome. Yeah, you will be able to see it in all the socials, Santosh. Yeah, it should be there on YouTube as well. Cool. So I have posted the link. So you have all the resources over here. We will be saying that in a bit. Cool. And all right. So enough of the intro. I guess it's time to dive a bit into the action. Let's get started. Cool. So let me pull off my screen. So this is the resource that I was talking about. You can see like I have mentioned all the links. So first and foremost, like if you have not checked into this event, make sure that you go to the check-in link and just check into the event. Uh, yeah, it will take you to this page. Uh, yeah, and then you can click on register and check in. Awesome. Let me do that as well. Yeah, uh, cool. Just a second. Now you can see that you are checked in, right? So this will give you some points for the day that will make you eligible to win the standard GSW swags and just for the record itself. So make sure that you are checked in. And the next thing that we need, as I already said, is the Postman account. So head over to the Postman link, and if you have not, I have already, signed up. So it directly takes me to the dashboard, but it will take you to the home screen, and from there you can use your Google sign in or just email and password to sign up. So make sure you do that before we get started. And I will wait for the folks like to give me a thumbs up or a thumbs down, to see if they are following till here. So is everything all loud and clear till now? So we are just getting started. We have first checked into the event and then we are signing up for the Postman account. Is that all clear? Can I get something from the viewers in the chat? Yep, cool, cool. Thank you, Vikras. Next up, thank you, Sananda as well. Next up, like we have the workspace. So I will be talking about this in a bit. Cool. So we have the workspace link that you can reference to follow along this tutorial. It contains all the requests and routes that we will be using and all. It's basically the completed part of this track, but I would recommend you to not uh, use it in the beginning itself, because I will be explaining all the details. So this is like a reference point that you can use to see the actual code, right? And as I said, like these are the topics that we'll be covering today. Cool. Uh, yeah, great to see Daniel and Rasni following as well. Awesome. Now, let me pull off my whiteboard and let's talk about APIs before we dive into the demo. Right. So, what are APIs? So, APIs are basically, I would say, the uh, I like to call them as the pigeon. Sorry, cool. Pigeon of the web. Cool. So I like to call them as the pigeon of the web, and you might be wondering why, right? So in normally what happens is that in the internet, so there will be just a second. This is my first time using this Skelly draw tool. So yeah, cool. I'm learning how to use it as well. So there will be client, right? So these are like your browser. So the way you are watching the stream, right? So you are in the Twitch site, right? So this is your client, and then there will be a server. Let's say that you are trying to access the Twitter server, and this is your browser. So you're trying to log into your Twitter account. So that what normally happens is that your browser will send a request. So there is something called request to the Twitter server, and the server, let's say Twitter server will verify all the credentials, whether your username and password matches or not, and all those things, and it will process all that, and it will eventually send you a response. So it will either be a success response that you have successfully logged in, or if your credentials don't match, then it will be error response, right? That you are not authenticated. So this is like a normal flow what happens in a client server architecture in the web world. So what allows this to happen is something called APIs, and that is where APIs comes in. So APIs acts in this middle layer, right? So these are the communication medium that allows this request and response to happen. So in other words, what we can say is that APIs allows two systems to interact with each other, right? So uh, these systems might be internal system as well as external system. So I will, you know, let me go here. So APIs, internal APIs, and external APIs. So these are the two kind of APIs in a broad sense. So the earlier example where we used, where we used Twitter to log into the account. So that was some kind of external API because our browser is accessing the Twitter platform, right? Let's say you have built a calendar app. So you have built a calendar app, and now you want you want your user to sync their Google Calendar in this app, right? So sync Google Calendar. So this is normal flow where you will use the external APIs, because what you are asking is that we don't want every access of your Google account. We just need to sync your calendar. So that is all we need. So APIs allow you to scope your permissions as well. So that is a kind of an external API. The other example would be, sign in using Google, Facebook, and all those things. Or if you want some weather data for your app. So those are the kind of external APIs. The other are the internal APIs. So this is for your own system. So own system. So let's say you have a React app, right? So you have a React app, which is the front end of your application, and then it needs to communicate with the Node.js app server, right? So this will be this will be your backend. So this is your front end, and this is your backend, right? This will serve your backend server. So the communication that happens between these two systems, right? So this is like for your own single system. So it is an internal API which is not exposed to the real world. So the thing that I want to clarify is that APIs allow us two systems to communicate with each other and share different services and functionalities. So that is how APIs works, and that is what they do in general. And there are different ways to interact with APIs, right? So uh, you can okay, awesome. So you can use the CLI tools. So you can use the CLI tools to work with APIs, or you can use the GUI tools, right? So GUI tools, and we will be focusing on the GUI part today. So that will be Postman, right? And there are things like uh, call, if you have heard about it, right? So these are the tools that you can uh, access APIs from command line, but we'll be using GUI because it makes things a lot easier, right? Now let me talk a bit about the request part that I'm talking, right? So normally what happens is that when you send a request, let's say to google.com, right? So dot you type in this in your browser, right? So what happens behind the scenes is that, so this, when you just type this, so there will be something called method. I'll be talking about this in a bit, but this is normally a get method, HTTP method. And this part of your request, just a second. So this part of your request is called the path, right? So this is your path, and there will normally, the endpoint. So if you just type in google.com, that's normally the slash endpoint with nothing after it, but there might be some other case where you will actually type in something here. So this is your endpoint, or this is also called the base URL in most cases, right? And this is what a request looks like, right? And in a most general sense. So there might be different type of request. I will be talking that while I will do the demo. Cool. So this is about the request, and eventually when you do this, you will be greeted with the Google homepage, right? So you can see the Google logo, and you will see all this response, right? So this is actually the response, and normally you get a response in JSON format, or it can even be a simple HTML page, right? Cool. So this is what is about request and response. So without further ado, I think we should go to the Postman app and see all this in action. Cool. Awesome. So let me go back to the Postman app and uh, okay, cool. So let me go to the Postman. Let me go to one of the workspaces. So in Postman, if you go to the dashboard, then you will be seeing something similar to this. You can go to the workspace tab and create a workspace that is brand new, or you can use your my workspace, which is the default one. So I have created a workspace called stream for this one. So I'll be going over there. So workspace is like an area where you can work on different APIs. So usually you can divide it from your project. So you can use different workspace for different projects, because that will help you to isolate different APIs, or you can also separate it in a team wise, right? So let's do that. I have made a workspace for these streams, and I'll be working in this workspace in this entire session. Cool. Awesome. So as you can see that there are like things like collections, APIs, environment, mock servers, and all those things on the left side. Uh, this is the overview of where you can write your description of the workspace, right? The uh, important part that we need to do is, create a new collection. Collections are like the folders for your request. So let me create a new, collection over here. Cool. I'll click on plus. I have created a new collection. You can even rename it. Click on create new connection and then rename it. So let's see. Test endpoint. So I have named this collection as a test endpoint. So you can name it whatever you want, right? And after that, what you need to do is that uh, click on add a request button, right? So let me zoom in a bit. Cool. So if you click on add new request, you will be seeing something similar to this. Google. Let me name this endpoint as Google. And now you can see what I was talking about. So this is the part where you will get all the HTTP methods, and the most common ones are the first five ones. So get is something similar to accessing information. So if you want to access any information from the server, or just retrieving the information, so that is where we normally use the get request. While if you want to send something to the server, if you want to post some data or add something data to the server, let's say you are creating a blog, right? So normally what you do is that if you want to get a list of blogs, then you use the get method. Else if you want to add a new blog, you use the post method and put it for something that you want to update. So you have, let's say you want to update a new blog, right? So you want to update an existing blog, so that is normally when you use the put method. Patch is similar to put, but okay, so can someone in the chat tell me what is the difference between put and a patch? I would love to know that. Cool. I am waiting for your responses. Can someone tell me what is the difference between put and a patch? Put means update. Okay, Subhas, you are close. And patch, what about patch? Okay, cool. So let me tell you all. So put is used when we want to update the whole information, right? So let's say you have a blog with some title, description, author name, and date, right? So if you want to update all these four different aspects or data, then you use the put method. Patch is only used to update the certain part of your data, right? So let's say you just want to update the title of your blog. That is when you use the patch method. I hope that makes things clear. So patch is only used for partial update, while put is used for the whole update, right? And delete, as from the name, it's very clear. Like you, if you want to delete some resources on the server, you use the delete method. So these are the most common methods, right? There are other methods as well, which you can always look into, but we will mostly be working with these five methods. Cool. So let us try to, type in google.com. So this is like the endpoint of our app, of the server that we are trying to access, and just click on send and see what happens, right? Cool. So you can see that we are getting some response. So it's displayed on this bottom section. So I will pull this over, and you can see that we are getting some HTML response, and this is the actually the HTML of the Google homepage. So if you click on preview, if you click on the preview tab, you can see the homepage being loaded, right? So this is the response that you are getting in the preview form, and this is the raw HTML response. Cool. So now let's try to, see what happens when we go to google.com in the browser and search for, let's say, MLS, right? So if I go on MLS, then you can see in the URL a lot of things are being populated, right? So let's just copy and paste this in Postman and see what's happening under the hood. Okay, cool. I'm just copying and pasting the entire URL. What was displayed to me in the browser itself. And now let me go here and click send. Cool. So I get this response, which eventually will list the result. So yeah, you can see that this is listing the result with Mesolik hacking, and this is the HTML response. But what I want to focus here is this params tab. So if you go over the params tab, you can see a thing called query parameters, right? So these are the query params or the query parameters, and you can see that it has a key and a value thing, right? So the first key is the Q or the query, right? So it stands for query, and the value is whatever we have searched on Google, right? So this was entered from our side, but everything else, like you can see, there are source and there are UACT and other all those key which was set by Google on itself. So these are all set by default, and this is the one that we have typed. So normally what happens is that the endpoint will contain the host. So this is actually the host. Google.com is our host, and there will be query parameters afterwards, right? So there might be different query parameters, and some of them it's set by default itself, and the others it's set by us. So in this example, the query for MLS was set by us. So this is the thing that we need to remember, right? And there will also be, you can see there is a section for auth, right? So auth we will be diving mm, into detail in the second part of the series where we're talking about the authentication. Since google.com does not require any authentication, like you don't need to have credentials to use Google. Anyone can just go to google.com and search anything. So you don't need auth uh, for this resource. But if you want to use some APIs that have some restrictions on who can use it, or you need to have some permissions, then you will use auth. And for the second part, we'll be using the Spotify Web API, where you need to be logged in and authenticated in order to use the API, right? And there will be different headers, and you can see there are 6 headers hidden. So these are just the metadata, right? So metadata that goes along with your request. So there are some cookies information. There is some information about the host, which will be the our browser. There is some information about the agent. So you are saying that you are using the Postman runtime, right? Because we are sending this request from Postman, and there will be other metadata, and there will be body. So in this request, we are just trying to get some information, and we are not sending any information to the server. So the body is none, but I will be showcasing where we will use the body in a bit. So, and there are things like pre-request and test. So these are like the scripts that you can run either before the sending the request. So these are the scripts that will run before request, and test are something that are run after you receive the response from the server, right? So that is all what we need to know from now. And the other thing that I want you to know is this green, whatever is shown in this global globe icon. So it's saying that 200 okay, right? So these are actually the HTTP status codes, right? So 200 is something, that says that, hey, your request was successful and everything went great. So you are getting this response. So 200 means the success or the okay response. So if you just go and Google the HTTP status codes, you will see, all the status codes, right? So anything in range from 200 to 299 is the success response. 300 to 399 means redirection messages. 400 are the client error, and 500 are the server errors, right? So I hope like most of you have seen the 404 response code, right? So that is something like the resource was not found, right? So you can dive into details, like everything is mentioned in the here if you want to know more about it. But for now, just uh, knowing whether it's a 200 series response or a 400 series response or a 500 series response would serve our purpose. Cool. Okay, so now that was enough about the request. Let's just try to see what happens if we change the method to post, right? So if you click on send, then you get a response that it was not allowed, error 405 not allowed, because we are not sending any information to the Google server, and it does not allow us to do that as well, right? Because we can't post something of our own to the Google server. That's why this method was invalid. But we can of course get information from there, so and that's why it's success. It is a success. Cool. So now we have done this. I will reset all of these, right? And let me delete this entire folder, this collection itself. Okay. Let me delete the request first. Cool. Now, what I want all of you to do is that, go to the workspace link that I've shared with you all in the resources tab. I'll just post this again in the comment itself, so that it will become a bit easier. Cool. So just go to this workspace, right? And you go open the part one of the workspace in the left tab. So in the overview section, you will see some documentation, right? Inside the workspace, just click on part one API fundamentals. Cool. So this is what we will be doing today. So what I want all of you to do is that it has some documentations about how to work with these APIs as well. So I want all of you to, click on fork. So this will create a copy of this collection in your own workspace. So it will help you to work with this API in your own workspace instead of just looking at this public workspace. So I want all of you to click on fork. This will create a copy in your own workspace. So let me do that as well. uh, Okay, so I want this to be created in my streams workspace. So give it a label, whatever name you want. And on the workspace, select the streams tab. And if you want to, what are the updates that is being made to this original collection, then you can click on watch original collection. So that if I make any changes to this public collection, it will also reflect on your own collection. So this is like, forking on a GitHub repo if you have used GitHub earlier, making a copy of your own basically. So click on fork collection. Cool. Cool. So now you can see that the collection, like this collection is displayed on my workspace. So let's click on the library reference tab. And here you can see a documentation, right? So if you see that it's mentioning something, the base URL is this one, and like there are different request in it, right? You can explore if you want, but I will be showcasing one by one in detail. Now I want you all to click on the collection label, right? And here you can see the documentation for the entire collection. So yeah, the only thing that we need to know for now is the base URL. So I just want you to, copy the base URL. That's it, nothing else. Just copy the base URL, and in your own collection, if you have not already, create a new collection. Do not work on this collection itself, uh, because like things can get messy. I want you to follow along from scratch, right? So that's why I am encouraging you to create a new collection, like I have created test endpoints, and I will create a new request over here. Cool. So on the new request tab, uh, you can see that we have a lot of endpoints in the reference tab, right? So let us just try to paste the URL over here and see what happens. So in the new request tab, I'm just pasting the URL and clicking on send. Let's see what happens. Okay, so there. Okay, cool. Yeah, you can see that we got a response, right? It says that welcome to the library API, and it is even hinting us to go to the slash books route to get a list of books, right? Cool. So what we have eventually done is that we have select the get HTTP method in order to work with this API to just see the response that we get from this URL, and then once we hit the send button, we got this response. Okay, now let's try to see what happens if we actually add slash books at the end, right? So as it is asking us to do so, right? Cool. So if you click on slash books, or if you type in slash books and hit send, you will see a list of books, right? So this is an array of books. It contains the book name, the author of the book ID, the genre, year published, whether it is checked out or not, and the created date, right? So this is like the list of books that we are getting. So let me rename this request as get books. Cool. I don't see new request in my fork. No, like that was because like I created a new collection, Zenial, and I just after I created a new collection, I you know created a new request. So that is why it was named new request. I guess it will be, you can name it whatever you want. So just create a new collection or and then create the request tab. So it will create a new request for you. Cool. So in the test endpoint, so this is the fork that you all will be seeing, right? So I'm asking you to create a new collection and work over there, right? So if you click on test endpoint and click on add request, then you will see the new request tab, and you can rename it to the requests, right? So I will delete it for now, you know. Okay, so this URL is giving me, or this endpoint slash books is giving me the list of books, right? So I have renamed it as get books. So let's see what else do we have. So in the library reference, the next step would be to, get a specific book. Cool. So, so now let's see how we can, instead of getting the list of all the books, I just want to get one specific book, right? So let me create a new request. So I will go over here and click on add request, and I will paste the same URL. Cool. And so this path was giving me the list of books, right? And the reference API is telling me that I need to use something called slash and colon ID to get a specific book. So let us try that one. Slash colon ID, right? So now see what this is, and let's just try to send it for now. Cool. So just a second, Zenial. Okay, you don't test endpoints. So this is also the name that I have given. You can, I guess, like if you just click on new collection, just a second, just click on the plus button. It will be the new collection for you, right? So if you click on plus button, that will be new collection. You can rename it to whatever you want for this demo, right? And once you create the collection, you will see add a request button over here. I hope that makes things clear. Cool. So let us go to this tab again. And it is say that book with ID is not found because we have not provided the ID itself, right? Oh, yeah, cool, 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 Daniel. So this is something called a path variable. So we have understood about query parameters earlier, right? Where we used google.com, and the query parameter was set to something like this, right? Q, and then we set value to whatever search we want, right? So query parameters are usually referred by, the question mark tab, question mark, and then whatever the key and the value you want, right? So this is how query parameters are displayed. But if you want to use, the path variable, so let's say you want to get the details of a specific book, then there is something called path variable that you can use, and this API is asking us to do so, right? So in the path variable tab, it is unlike the query parameters, which is invoked by the question mark, path variables are invoked by the colon, right? So if you type in colon ID, so that refers to a path variable, and we can now provide a value to it. So let us try to give it a random value for now and see what happens. So now it says that book with ID, this is not found because it is not a valid ID. And now let's go to the list of books and try to grab one which is actually ID. So I will copy the ID of this book called A Practical Approach to API Design, but you can, copy any ID that you want of any of the book, right? So just copy one of the ID from the book and then go to this tab and click on the paste it on the value tab, right? So now if I click on send request, now you can see that I get details about this specific book, right? So now it is only showing me this particular book and the information associated with it and not the other book. So this is how we can get a particular resource in a server. So this was like a list of the resources, everything that you have in slash books. And this is like, hey, I just want the book with this ID. So this is what uh, this is the second request that we did. So let me just rename this to get specific book. Okay. So that it makes things clear when I visit it later on, right? So I hope that like you all are following up until now. Uh, cool. So let me know like if you have got to this far and if you are facing any of the problems. So have you done both of this, like getting all the books and getting a specific book? Cool, Subhas. Anyone else who just have any queries or want me to slow down or just let me know if you have done till now? Cool, Vishal. Awesome, awesome. Okay, so now I want to ask you all a question. So let's create a new request first, right? In the test endpoint, let me delete the new collection first. Just a second. Cool. So let me add a new request. So what do you think should be the, HTTP method if I want to add a new book to the server or to the, yeah, to the server? So what do you think should be the HTTP method? Will the GET request work here as well? What do you think should be the, yeah, cool. Daniel got it. Awesome, awesome. So yeah, it is indeed a post request, right? So let's see what is the API reference telling us to do, right? So you might be wondering like, how do we know the endpoint, right? So how do you know which endpoint to look, to get for books, or how do you know whether we need to use I path variable called ID, or how do you know how to send a or add a book to the server, right? So this is usually a part of the API documentation. So whatever API that you are trying to use, whether it's an internal API that your backend engineer is building for you, and if you are a front end engineer, this is something that your backend developer will provide it to you if you are a front end developer. And if you are trying to work with some external APIs, like let's say Google APIs, if you want to use some Google Maps, right, in your application, or if you want to use the Twitter API, or if you want to use some weather API, or if you want to use some sports API to get data about the current sports activities. So all of these is a part of their API docs. So if you go to their API, sorry, if you go to their API docs, then you will be able to see what are the endpoints and what are the parameters that it takes, what are the path variables that it takes, right? Along with an example. So this is usually a part of that. So let me quickly show you one. So we will be using Spotify Web API later on as well. Today itself in the second part. So if you see over here, it will give you all the reference, right? So let's say if you want to get album, then this is the endpoint that you will all be using, right? So, and it even has some examples and how to use it, what are the required parameters and all those things. So we'll be going over this in details, and just wanted to let you know that this is not something that you should know by yourself. The endpoints and everything will be given by a backend developer or the external third party. Cool. So let us see in the reference, like how do we add a new book. So it's saying that the endpoint is slash books, and you might be wondering what this base URL is, right? So if you see the library reference, then there will be this things called base URL in every request, right? So can anyone tell me what base URL like is, and why do we need it, or like why, and what is, the advantage of using that instead of pasting the whole path over here? Can anyone tell me that, or just give me an idea why we should use that? It is the main path. Okay, you are close, but why should we, rename it as a base URL instead of copy and pasting it everywhere? Do you have any idea, like why have we renamed it in a base URL and not, simply copying and pasting the entire path? Okay, anyone from the crowd and the people? Yeah, yeah, exactly. You all are close to that, and yeah, the thing is that we don't want to repeat this path again and again. So if you just set it as a variable, like when you do program, when you write a program, you just set a variable and then you use the variable whenever you want, right? So it's we are just doing that. So let us also set this URL as a variable, because this is something that does not change, right? So the endpoints can change. So after whatever is after slash, right? So it can change depending on what are the type of request and what you are trying to do. But this host name or uh, the main path will never change. So we can set this as a variable, right? So just you can select this and click on set and set as a variable. So I will do the same thing. I'll give it a name of a base URL, uh, base URL, right? And you need to select a scope. And in Postman, like, you have three different level of scope. So if you set a global scope, then no matter which collection you work throughout your workspace, you will be able to access that variable, right? So if I set the base URL as this value even if I'm working in the test endpoint collection, it will also be accessible to every other collection. So it will be the same for part one collection or any other new collection that I create, right? So this will be a global scope. If you just select it as a collection scope, then this variable will only be valid for the test endpoint scope, right? So that is what we want for this um, demo, because like we might work with other collections which have a different base URL later on. So that is something that we will be doing. And you can also set the environment level variable. So you can create an environment in Postman and uh, set a variable so whatever collections you use, if you have that environment set to that specific, then you will be able to access that. For now, like, we will be using this as a collection variable. So let me do that again. Okay, cool. Set as a variable, set a new variable. I will name this base URL, but you can name it whatever you want. And I will set this in a collection scope. Cool. So now what happens is that the collection level variable or any variable, it's referenced in a double curly braces in Postman. So I will just copy and paste this and and change everywhere, right? So in all the requests, I'm going to change this. Give me a second. Cool. So now you can see that even if I do this, this works, right? Because it's the same thing. It's just a variable. And now you might be wondering how to avoid how to change this base URL if I want to, right? So just click on the collection name, so test endpoint, right? And on the, I'll close the documentation for now, and on there will be a variables tab, right? So if you click on variables, here you will be able to see all the collection level variables. So we just set the base URL. You can rename it, and you can even change the values for it. uh, One thing you need to understand is the difference between initial value and the current value. So initial value is like the default value that you want your variable to be, and current value is like whatever you want to use in the actual request, right? So most of the time it's going to be the same, because like we will be setting the default value as the current value itself. But let's say you want to use some secrets, right? Some secrets or API keys or something like that have some client ID or client secrets, that we'll be seeing all of that in the second part. So those are the values that you don't want to share it with other people, right? So in that case, you can set it as a variable, but just mention it in the client, in the current value tab, and not in the initial value tab. This is because if you share this collection with other people, or if you share this workspace with other people, they will only be able to see the initial value and not the current value. So that is why you must always keep your credential, client secrets, client APIs, and all those things that you don't want other people to see in the current value and not on the initial value, right? So that is a thing to remember for security purpose as well. Cool. Okay, now let's try to send a post request, right, and see what happens. Cool. So if you just hit the endpoint and click on send, we see that a message saying that unsupported media type undefined, right? So this means that we have not sent any of the uh, body or the the actual information of the book that we want to add to the server, right? So that is why it's saying this response. So if you go to the body part, here you will be able to add all the information that you want to go to the server or that you want to save to the server, right? So in post request, we normally don't use params because that is normally for the get request. For the post request, it's implying that we want to add something to the server, so we must send some data, right? And that normally happens through this step. So there are different data formats that support it. Form data, there is a raw data, binary, even you can even send some GraphQL data, right? But the one that we'll be using today is the raw one, right? And in the raw data, we will be sending the information of a book that we want to add in a JSON format. So JSON is the JavaScript object notation format. It is very easy, and you will be able to get along with it in no time. So let's click on the post request on the reference, and let's see the example of a body over here. So if you click on the body part, you'll be able to see the example over here, right? So let's just copy and paste this on our own request, right? So let me go here and paste this over here. Let me also quickly rename this to add book, right? Okay, cool. So now I am clicking on the add book uh, request, and now what I want you all to is to change the values of these key, right? So in JavaScript object notation, we start with the curly braces, and we have things called keys and values, right? So they are inside the quotation. All the keys should be inside the double quotations. So if you see, like, we have a key called title, author, genre, and the year published, right? So all these key have a value which is set by colon, and this value can be string, integer, and other things, right? So we have a title, right? So I will just rename the title of this book to, let's say, GSW API book, and the author will be me. So I will change the author to my name, and then let's say this fiction as a tech genre, and the year published will be 2023, right? So this is the body message that we want to send to the server, right? And in the real world, even this, like, what are the messages or what are the data or what sort of body should you send to the post request, it is all defined in the API documentation itself. Okay, so you don't need to worry like where does this title, author, genre, and year published come from. So these are all documented in the API docs. So that is that is where you get all this data, and the keys and the values to put in. So if I click on send now, you see that we get a message of okay, and it says that the status code is 201, which means that a request or our request was success and a resource is created on the server, right? So now, how do I check if my data, if my book is added? So can anyone in the chat tell me how do I check if this book was actually added or not? So there are two ways to do it. Can anyone tell me that? How do I check if this book? Okay, yeah, Siddharth is on the point. So we can use the get request to, get the list of all the books and see if it was actually added or not. So if I click on get books, the list of all books, you can see that, my book is over here. I can see that Vishal created the other book as well, and Gabriel and Adina. So cool. So other, like, you folks are also creating the books, and my book is over here, right? So this was the GSW API book, and it is here as well. If I want to just get the information of my book, what I can do is just copy the ID of my book and go to the get specific book request, and in the path variable, set the value of ID to the new one, right? So if I click on send, then here you will be able to see the details of my book. Cool. So that is how we add a request, right? So, and that is how we uh, add a resource to the servers, and for that we use the post request. And if you click on save, uh yeah, Postman also visualize everything so nicely, like if all the get requests are labeled by get and post request and everything, all of that. Cool. Now can anyone tell me how do I update update, you know, update. Let's say we don't want to update the whole book. I just want to update the author or the, you know, year published. Can anyone tell me which command should I use if I just want to update the author or the year published? Using patch. Yeah, Vishal got it right. Awesome, awesome. And Siddharth as well. Cool. So let's do that. So let us create a new request. Let's click on add a request, right? And I will use the patch method. Uh, the URL is gonna be the same patch. Right. Now I need to tell it. I need to pass it two information, right? So one is what is the updated content that I want to pass. That will be in the body section. So let me go over there, click on raw, and then JSON itself again. So let us see like what is there in the library reference as well in the path section. So if you click on body, you can see that you can even add a new, you can add a new checked out section as well. So you can add a new part where you can say whether your book, whether a book is checked out or not. So let's do the same thing, but I will do two things actually. I will not just add the checked out property. I will also add a new property, right? So let us go over there. Checked out, one of that is true. You can separate the, property by comma in JSON. So I will also change the genre. Okay, let's change the genre. Yeah, I will copy that, and in the next part. Okay, cool. Just a second. Let me fix this double quotation error. Cool. And I will change the genre to, let's say, science fiction, right? So I have updated two of the details. Like one is the checked out section, which is default to false. If you want to know how, then you can just go to the post request and you see that the checked out section was not passed in, right? And if you in the post request, so if you click on get books, then most of the checked out is false. So which means that this property was set to false by default. But if I want to update it, then I will have to use either a post or a patch request. So that's it. That is why I have used this parameter, and it takes a boolean value of true or false with no commas. And I have also changed the genre. Cool. So these are the two things that I want to change. And let's click on send. Cool. Now it's saying that patch method was not allowed on the route slash books. Can anyone tell me what is wrong with this request and why was this error? I have updated two things. One is the checked out property and the genre property, but it's saying that this is not allowed. Can anyone in the chat tell me like why was this a error and what do we need to do to fix it? Yep, exactly. Exactly, Vishal and Siddharth. Yes, exactly. We just sent a request to slash books, but how will the server know like which book to update, right? So that is why we need to provide a specific book. And how do we notify a specific book, or how do we mention a specific through the use of ID, right? So let's use that. We will use the we will see the documentation, and it's again using a path variable, right? So we'll just use that as well. So after slash, I use the path variable ID and I will give it a value. So we can only update the book that we have created. So I'll just go over here and I'll copy the ID. Awesome. And I will paste it over here. I will paste the value over here. So now I have given it the value of the book that I want to update, the ID. And now let's click on send. Yeah, now we can see the message as okay, right? So that means that the request was successfully validated and it did update. Now to verify like whether it actually updated it or not, I can go to the get specific book tab and just send the request again. And if I see the response, yeah, you can see that the genre was changed to science fiction and checked out was set to true. So these are the two values that we updated using the patch method, and it did work. So let us save this as well. Let us rename this request. You can even rename from here as update portion of a book. We are not updating an entire book. So we are just updating a portion of a book, right? So that is a path method. And the last one that we are going to, see for today, and this part is the delete method. So that will allow us to delete books from the server, right? So let us just do that. I guess this will be pretty easy for you all from now, because like you are pretty much familiar with all the different type of requests, right? So let's go to the new request tab and let me type in delete book, right? And the URL is going to be the same, right? So let me just copy and paste it. And so in order to delete a book, we don't need to provide it any other data than the ID of the book that we want to delete, right? So just go to the value tab and uh, copy the ID of the book that you created, right? So copy the ID. I'll copy this ID and then, yep, Daniel, I will. I will. Just a second. So I will just explain what a patch request is again before I jump into the delete one. I hope that will make things clear. So let's say like we are getting this specific book, right? I hope this is clear. Like this is the all the details of the book that we get, and as you can see there are like 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 different properties, right, of a single book. So let's say now I want to, and this book was created by me. So if I want to update all the 7 details, let's say I want to update all the title, author IDs and everything, that is some, that is the use case where we will be using the put method, because we want to update the entire book itself. And if we just want to, let's say, update a portion of the book, let's say I just want to change the genre or genre and year published, right? I don't want to update the whole thing. So that is the use case when we will be using the pass method. Got it? So like, so patch is for partial update, and you know, uh, put is for the the entire update, like updating the whole thing, right? And yeah, so if you want to update, just go to the uh, pass method, and in the body section, just update whatever just mention all the things that you want to update. Or if you want to update the whole book, then there needs to be all the uh, seven properties, right? And this is just a convention, by the way. If it all depends on how your backend developer or some other external APIs have been defined, but this is a general convention. Even you can, use the pass method to update entire thing, or even if you can update a um, portion of a resource using using a put request itself, or even a post request. To be honest, it is just defined by the backend developer or the API developer, and depends on the use case. But this is the general convention and is used in most of the web APIs. So just mentioning you the general convention, but even everything about post, patch, and delete can be made with a post request itself. So just depends on the convention, but we are following the standard condition. I hope that makes things clear, Daniel. Is there any other doubt? I guess that makes things clear. Let me know if you have any questions. In the meantime, let's see what is a delete request. Cool. Yep, you are most welcome, Daniel. So in order to delete a book, the only thing that we need to pass is the ID, that as I already said, right? So and again, this is mentioned in the reference or the API docs, right? So that is how you will know what to provide in the path variable, because this is not something that you are, you should know by yourself. Cool. So in the ID, let me just paste the value and I click on send. Okay. So now, oh, sorry, I was just sending a get request, right? So let me, change it to delete. Let me copy this ID again. Mm, this was the value, not this one. Okay. And instead of a get request, it should be a delete request instead. And let me click on send. And you see that we got a message of okay with a 200 status code. That means that everything was success. And let's try to see if it actually works. So now if I try to get the same book, I should not be able to see the book because it was deleted, right? So yep, you can see that the book with this ID is not found. So, and you get a status code of 404 not found, right? Because that resource is not on the server. Cool. So that, I guess, completes all the different type of methods that we need to see for now. If you click on save, like, so they updated over here as well. So we learned about get request, we learned about post request, we learned about put, we also learned about paths, and the delete request, and these are the most common API HTTP methods that we use. You know, uh, cool. So can anyone tell me if they are till here? Like till here and completed all the tasks till now? I would love to know that. And if you have any questions in the meantime, I would also love to, answer that. We have just few different things to discuss before we wrap up, but I just want to make sure that everyone was able to follow along till here, and I hope you all understood as well. Okay, I saw a thumbs up from Bisal. Anyone else? Cool, 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 awesome. Yep, Siddharth understood as well. Anyone else? Awesome, awesome. Cool. So great to see that you all are following along and learning. Mm. Okay. Now I want to ask you all a question then. So if you all are very clear till now, let me think of a case and ask you a question. Okay. So let's imagine a scenario, right? So you are building, let's say, uh, a sports application that a mobile application or a web application doesn't matter. You are trying to build a sports application and you want to use some of the sports API provider, whoever make these sports APIs that will send you all the latest scoreboards and details about the sports match, right? So what is the request or a type of request that you will use to get the list of all the sports matches, or let's say all the sports matches, all the cricket or football matches? So which endpoint HTTP methods should you use? Not the endpoint, sorry, the HTTP methods. Will it be a post request, get request? Okay, I'm getting the responses. Anyone else? Cool. So yeah, most of you got it right, and it is indeed a get request because like you are trying to get some information about the matches, right? So that was very clear from the name itself, and yeah. So okay, so what is the request that normally happens when you create an Instagram post? Okay, so let's say you are creating a new Instagram, like adding a new photo to Instagram. So what will be the type of the method over there? You're trying to add a new post or a story to your Instagram account. Yep. Okay, I can see Zeniel is telling put. Okay, cool. Vishal is typing post. We have post as well. Subhas is telling put. Okay, so that will normally be a post request and not a put request because that is the first time you are creating the post in the Instagram, right? So you are creating a new post or a story or a reel to Instagram. So that means something you are adding to the server, right? So that is generally we use the post request. And let's say if you want to edit the caption, right? Or you say you want to change the layout or do some editing after you have posted your story or your Instagram post, that is when you use the put request, sorry, and not the post request. So that happens. That is the clear. I guess that makes things clear, and I guess now you are understanding, what are the different type of requests that happens behind the scenes when you interact with any of the web services and applications, right? So this will, having a clear understanding of APIs will give you that behind the scene information of how these things might actually be working. Cool. So before we wrap up the part one, let me go back to my board, and I'll be talking about one more thing. That will be I talked about internal and external APIs, right? So can anyone tell me what is internal API and like what is external API, just in a brief manner? difference between internal APIs and external APIs? Or just give me an example when we'll use internal APIs versus external APIs. Cool, cool. I'm waiting for you folks. Let me just grab a bottle of my water. Give me a second. Awesome. I am back. I'm waiting for an answer, folks. Okay, just tell me what is an external API and when we use that. Okay, cool. No worries. I will tell it again. So, uh, awesome. So let's say, mm, so we have two different kind of APIs. We have internal APIs, and then we have the external APIs, right? So internal APIs are for your own systems. So let's say you are trying to build a news app, right? So news app, and you have a React front end, and you have a Node.js backend. It could be in any other framework, does not matter. So this is your backend, and this is your front end, right? And these two needs to communicate with each other, right? So for they need to communicate with each other for every request, right? So this is also where we have APIs, and this API is the internal API because because both the front end and the back end is your own system, and they are not available to anyone outside, not available to public, used by your own system, not available to public, and used by own apps, right? So it is used by your backend and front end. So these are the internal APIs because these two interact with each other, and no one else will know what is the actual backend APIs and how are they working with each other, right? But let's say that now you want in your news app, so you it is again the news app itself, right? So this is the same app, and you have the front end and back end inside this bubble. Okay, so just consider this as the whole entire system. So now you want to use Google sign in, right? So you want to use Google sign in for your app. So so you want this functionality, but Google will not give you access to its system, right? So they will not give you access to the Google server. So how we will use that? So in order to use that, we will use the Google, sorry for that, Google Auth API. So they will provide something called the Google Authentication API, and that is something we will use. And this will help us communicate with the Google server. So Google server is somewhere over here. Sorry for my bad handwriting. So what happens is that the news app will call a function called Google sign in, and the Google sign in function will, uh, talk with the Google Auth API, which will send the request to the Google server, and Google server will send the response back. And if it is like, let's say I want to log in to the news app using my Google account, it will say, hey, I am this person, I want to provide the access to my news to this news application. Then Google server will validate all of the request, and it will send the response via Google Auth API to the user, and it will eventually allow us to log into that application. So that is what happens. We are accessing external systems via an external API. I hope that makes things clear. So now, do you know the difference between the external and internal APIs? I hope that makes things clear, right? Can anyone give me a thumbs up or anything? Like, even if there is a doubt, then I will be more than happy to clear it. Cool, cool. So now we know the difference between internal and external APIs. Thank you, Siddharth, players, and Daniel for the confirmation. Awesome. Okay, so that is it for now. In the part one, before I leave for the part two, I just want to give you all the um, things that we'll be doing in part two, so that it is just a follow up of this part one, and we'll be talking about a real world problem over there. So what we will be doing in part two is, I mentioned about authentications, right? I mentioned about authentications and authorizations, right? So, and authorizations. So in part two, we'll be talking about this thing. So the API that we used earlier, that was the library API. It was an open API because we didn't need to use any of the credentials or any email password or anything like that, right? We didn't need to authenticate to use that API. It was accessible by any one of you, right? But most of the time, there will be APIs where you need to authenticate, right? And you will need to authorize different sort of things. So we'll be learning about that in part two. Uh, it is mostly focused around this content, and we will also be building a song recommender. So we will build a song recommender. We will build a song recommender. I'm getting to that in a bit, Daniel, about part two. Just wait for a few more, 1 or 2 minutes, then I will be over there. So we'll be building a song recommender where we will be using a Spotify Wave API. So we'll be using a Spotify Wave API. Spotify Spotify API. So we'll be using a Spotify API to build a song recommender for us. So user will just mention the uh, name of the song that they really like and the artist who they really love or like to follow, and then we'll be recommending them the songs based on those two things, right? So we'll be doing all these requests. We'll be chaining the request. We'll be building a workflow, and then ultimately recommending them a song. We'll even be visualizing the response to get them a nice UI for that. So all of these sounds might sound a bit complex, but it really is not. It is very easy, and it is very easy to follow along. I will be make sure that you get along with all the steps, and I will be clearing all your doubts along uh, with that again. And now talking about the time for the second session. So if you just go to the Postman resource itself, the link that I sent earlier, I'll just make sure that I post it again. So this is the tracker link, and I will even mention the registration and checking link. So this is the second link for the part two. So that is happening on 5:30 p.m. Indian Standard Time if you are following from the Asia Pacific region, and from on the for the North America and any folks, Europe folks, it's 8 a.m. EST, right? So this is the time when the session will happen, and we will be talking about all these things in the part two. Cool. So I hope that you all enjoy till here, right? And if you have any questions, then just let me know in the thread, uh, in the Discord chat, in the GSW API week. Uh, and for those of you folks who will stay till the end of part three, there will be a swag giveaway, right? So you can even get started now with that, uh, right? So what you need to do to enter in the swag giveaway is that just share your learnings, right? So whatever you have learned from this entire track, not just this. This is the part one, right? So once you're done with the part two or part three, just share whatever you have learned in this track by mentioning and tagging at the rate Majorly Hacking and my Twitter handle on Twitter with hashtag GSW, and make sure to do it by April 10th and 10 p.m. IST. Or what you can do is that see like whatever collect like the workspace you have worked, right? So you can make it public. You can make the workspace public, and you can share the workspace. Share the workspace or the collection link, uh, showcasing whatever you have done, right? In the MLS Discord server. I'll create a public thread in the second part. Uh, in the API week channel where you can just paste in the collection link, and we will be doing a live wheel of names things, and we'll be picking a random winner over there, and they will be getting a swag bundle from MLS. So yeah, so this is how you can participate in the swag contest. Yeah, so super excited to see you all, and I am hoping that all of you will be joining me in the part three of the session. Let me remove my screen for now. Cool. So thank you everyone for once again for joining, and I hope to see you all in the part two. So that is it for now. I hope to see you all around in part two. Thank you everyone. Bye bye folks. Bye bye. Thank you for joining in. Bye bye. Bye bye. Thank you folks. Thank you folks.